He paid $850 for a rotting mountain cabin that locals called cursed, a place so remote even GPS couldn't find it. But when Marcus Hayes pulled back a false wall in the basement, he didn't find mold or mice. He found a military vault containing stolen treasures worth $265 million and a secret that would force him to choose between the fortune of a lifetime and doing what no one else had the courage to do for over 70 years. Before we dive into this story, make sure to smash subscribe, because tomorrow we have an extra special story for you that will blow your mind. The morning air in Ridgeline, Colorado, carried the sharp bite of pine and early autumn frost. Marcus Hayes sat in his battered Ford pickup, engine idling rough, staring at the county courthouse steps through a cracked windshield. His hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, calloused from years of swinging axes and now hammering nails. He was 38 years old but felt 60, the kind of tired that settles into your bones and doesn't leave. His left knee throbbed, the same knee that had buckled under a falling pine during the Coldwater Fire 3 years ago, the same knee that ended his career with the Forest Service, the same knee that cost him his marriage, his pension, and most days his pride. Now he was a carpenter, taking whatever jobs he could find in a town that didn't need many. Deck repairs, cabinet installations, the occasional shed. Nothing that paid enough. Nothing that made him feel like the man he used to be. Marcus shifted in his seat and pulled out the crumpled foreclosure notice from his jacket pocket. He'd circled one listing in red ink. Mountain cabin, 12 acres, no utilities, as-is condition, minimum bid $800. The address was barely legible, scrawled in faded pencil at the bottom. Black Pine Road, mile marker 17, past where the asphalt ends. He'd scraped together $912 from 3 months of odd jobs. It was supposed to go toward rent, toward the child support he was already 2 months behind on. But something about that listing had hooked him. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was the foolish hope that he could fix something, anything, and make it worth more than he paid. Maybe he just needed a win. The courthouse clock chimed 9. Marcus killed the engine, stepped out into the cold, and limped toward the auction. Inside, the room smelled like old paper and burnt coffee. Folding chairs lined up in crooked rows. Maybe 15 people sat scattered throughout, most of them looking like vultures waiting for carry-on. Real estate flippers in cheap suits, contractors hunting for teardowns, a few locals just watching for entertainment. Marcus took a seat in the back, ball cap pulled low. He didn't want to be recognized, didn't want the pity or the questions. The auctioneer, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and a voice like gravel, stepped to the podium and began rattling off properties. Most went fast. A duplex in town sold for $43,000. A commercial lot near the highway, $68,000. People bid with the casual confidence of those who had money to burn. Then came lot number 17. Next up, the auctioneer said, shuffling papers. Foreclosed property at Black Pine Road, approximately 12 acres, single structure, described as a cabin built 1968. No power, no water hookup, access road unmaintained. Sold as is, no warranties, no inspections. Minimum bid $800. Silence. The auctioneer looked up. Anyone? 800 to open? More silence. Someone in the third row chuckled. Another man whispered something to his neighbor, and they both shook their heads. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. He raised his hand slowly. 800 from the back, the auctioneer said, almost surprised. Do I hear 850? Nothing. Going once at 800, twice at 800. The gavel hovered. Sold to bidder 23 for $800. Just like that, Marcus owned a mountain cabin he'd never seen. As people shuffled out, an older man in a flannel shirt approached Marcus near the exit. His face was weathered, deep lines carved around his eyes like canyon walls. You the one who bought the Drescher place? Marcus nodded. I guess so. That the name? Drescher? The man's expression darkened. Used to be. Old man lived up there for near 40 years. Died alone last winter. They found him in March when the snow melted. Marcus swallowed. I didn't know. Nobody did. He didn't want to be known. The man looked Marcus up and down. You planning to live up there or flip it? I don't know yet, Marcus admitted. Depends on what I find. The man gave a slow, knowing nod. Well, you be careful. That property's got a history. Folks around here don't go up that way much. Drescher made sure of it. What do you mean? But the man just tipped his hat and walked away, boots echoing on the marble floor. Marcus stood there for a moment, the signed deed heavy in his hand, wondering what the hell he'd just bought. 2 days later, Marcus loaded his truck with tools, a sleeping bag, a cooler of food, and a 5-gallon jug of water. His son Tyler was supposed to visit that weekend, the first custody visit in a month. His ex-wife, Jennifer, had been making excuses, saying Tyler didn't want to come, that he was busy with school and friends. Marcus knew the truth. Tyler blamed him for the divorce, for the injury, for everything falling apart. He was 15 now, angry and distant, and Marcus didn't know how to bridge the gap anymore. He'd sent Tyler a text the night before. Got a project this weekend. Could use your help if you're up for it. No pressure. The response came 3 hours later. Whatever. Marcus took that as a yes. The drive up Black Pine Road was worse than he'd imagined. The asphalt ended after 8 miles, turning into a rutted dirt path that climbed steeply through dense pine forest. His truck bounced over rocks and fallen branches, the suspension groaning. Twice he had to stop and move debris out of the way. The GPS signal had died miles ago, and he was navigating by instinct and a hand-drawn map the county clerk had sketched on the back of a napkin. After nearly an hour of crawling uphill, the trees opened into a clearing. And there it was. The cabin sat in the center of 12 acres of wild grass and scattered pines, backed against a rocky ridge that rose like a wall into the sky. It was bigger than Marcus expected, a 2-story structure built from dark timber and river stone. The roof sagged in places, and the windows were boarded up with weathered plywood. The porch leaned to one side, and the chimney had a visible crack running up the center. But it was still standing. After 56 years, it was still standing. Marcus parked and stepped out. The silence was absolute. No cars, no planes, no voices. Just wind moving through the pines and the distant call of a hawk circling overhead. The air smelled clean, sharp, untouched. He grabbed his tool bag and walked toward the front door. The wooden steps creaked under his weight, but held. The door was locked, but the key the county had given him fit perfectly. The lock turned with a heavy click, and the door swung inward with a low groan. Inside, the air was stale but not rotten. Dust covered everything, thick and undisturbed. The main room was large, with exposed beams running across the ceiling and a massive stone fireplace dominating one wall. Furniture sat beneath sheets, ghostly shapes in the dim light filtering through cracks in the boarded windows. To the left, a kitchen with a cast-iron stove. To the right, a staircase leading up. Marcus walked slowly through the space, his boots leaving tracks in the dust. Everything felt frozen in time, like whoever lived here had just stepped out and never returned. He pulled the sheet off a leather armchair near the fireplace. Beneath it, the chair was in perfect condition, not a tear or stain. He ran his hand along the armrest, and something about it felt deliberate, cared for. He moved to the kitchen. The cabinets were solid oak, hinges still smooth. Inside, dishes were stacked neatly, cups arranged by size. A coffee pot sat on the stove, clean and waiting. Whoever Drescher was, he wasn't a hoarder or a slob. He was organized, methodical. Marcus climbed the stairs, testing each step. They were solid, no rot. Upstairs were 2 bedrooms and a small bathroom with a clawfoot tub. One bedroom was empty except for a single bed frame. The other, the larger one, had a desk, a chair, and shelves lined with books. Hundreds of them. Military history, art catalogues, biographies of generals and explorers, books in languages Marcus didn't recognize. He pulled one off the shelf, The Rape of Europa, the fate of Europe's treasures in the Third Reich and the Second World War. Inside the cover, a name was written in careful script. Captain Raymond Drescher, U.S. Army, Monuments, Fine Arts, and Archives Program. Marcus stared at the name, Monuments Men. He'd seen a movie about them once, the soldiers who recovered stolen art during World War II. He looked around the room with new eyes. Who was this man? And why did he end up in a cabin in the middle of nowhere? That night, Marcus set up camp in the main room. He built a fire in the stone fireplace, and to his surprise, it drew perfectly. No smoke backup, no blockage. Someone had maintained this chimney, and recently. He heated a can of beans over the flames and ate in silence, watching shadows dance on the walls. As the fire crackled, he explored more. In a closet near the kitchen, he found a Coleman lantern and fuel. He lit it, and warm light filled the room. He also found candles, batteries, canned food, bottled water, supplies, as if someone had been preparing to stay or preparing for someone else to arrive. Then, beneath a stack of old newspapers, he found it. A leather journal, cover worn smooth with age. Marcus opened it carefully. The first page read, "Property of Captain Raymond Drescher. Private log. Unauthorized access prohibited." Marcus hesitated, then turned the page. The entries were dated, starting in 1946 and continuing sporadically through 2018. The handwriting was tight, precise, military. Marcus flipped through slowly, reading fragments. April 7th, 1946. Returned from Munich. Items secured, transport arranged, no record filed. This must remain hidden until the time is right. October 2nd, 1951. Built the lower vault today. Triple reinforced concrete. Steel-lined door. Combination known only to me. If I die before this is resolved, God forgive me. March 19th, 1973. Another inquiry from the Smithsonian. Told them I know nothing. The lies are becoming easier. That frightens me. Marcus's hands trembled as he read. Vault? What vault? He stood, holding the journal, and looked around the cabin with new intensity. He walked every room, tapping walls, lifting rugs, checking for hollow sounds or hidden seams. Nothing. Then he remembered. The basement. He hadn't checked the basement. He found the door near the back of the kitchen, almost hidden behind a pantry shelf. It was heavy, solid wood, and opened to reveal a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Marcus grabbed the lantern and descended slowly, the steps creaking softly under his weight. The basement was smaller than he expected, maybe 20 feet by 20 feet, with a low ceiling and concrete floor. It smelled damp, earthy. The walls were bare except for one section that seemed different. Smoother, newer. Marcus approached it, running his hand along the surface. It wasn't part of the original foundation. It was a false wall, installed later. He could see the seams now, barely visible in the lantern light. His heart started pounding. He went back upstairs, grabbed a crowbar from his tool bag and returned. He wedged the crowbar into the seam and pried. The wall resisted, then gave with a sudden crack. Dust and debris fell away, revealing a narrow gap. Marcus widened the opening, pulling away sections of drywall and framing. Behind it was another wall, but this one was different. This one was steel. A door, a vault door. It was massive, military grade, the kind you'd see in a bunker or a bank. In the center was a combination lock, brass and weathered but still functional. Above it, stenciled in faded white paint, U.S. Army property. Authorized personnel only. Marcus stepped back, breathing hard. His mind raced. What the hell was in there? And why was it hidden in a cabin in the Colorado mountains? He looked down at the journal still in his hand. He flipped through the pages frantically, looking for the combination, for any clue. Near the end, an entry from 2017 caught his eye. November 9th, 2017. I am 89 years old. My hands shake. My vision fades. I know my time is short. I have carried this burden for 71 years. I have lied, hidden, and protected what was never mine to keep. But I did it because I believed the world was not ready. I believed the wrong people would destroy what I saved. Perhaps I was wrong. Perhaps I was a coward. If someone finds this after I am gone, know that I acted out of love for beauty, for history, for the innocent. The combination is simple. It is the date we landed. The date everything changed. June 6th, 1944. Marcus's breath caught. June 6, 1944, D-Day. He turned back to the vault door and approached the combination lock. His fingers trembled as he dialed 06061944. The lock clicked. The heavy steel handle turned smoothly and the door swung open with a low hydraulic hiss. Cold air rushed out, dry and preserved. Marcus raised the lantern and peered inside. The vault was larger than he expected, stretching back into the darkness like a hidden chamber. The walls were lined with wooden crates, each one carefully labeled and stacked. In the center of the room sat a large metal table, and on it, covered with protective cloth, were shapes, frames, canvases. Marcus stepped inside, his heart hammering. He set the lantern down and carefully lifted one of the cloths. Beneath it was a painting. Oil on canvas, maybe 2 feet by 3 feet, in a gilded frame. The image showed a woman in a blue dress, standing beside a window, light falling across her face. The brushwork was exquisite, the colors still vibrant. In the bottom right corner, a signature, Vermeer. Marcus stumbled backward. Vermeer, Johannes Vermeer, one of the most famous painters in history. He'd seen prints of his work in museums. And this, if it was real, was worth millions. He turned to another covered frame and pulled back the cloth. A landscape, dark and moody, with twisted trees and a stormy sky. The signature read, Van Gogh. Another, a portrait of a young man in Renaissance clothing. The plaque on the frame read, Raphael, circa 1510. Marcus's legs gave out. He sat down hard on the concrete floor, staring at the paintings around him. There were dozens of them, maybe more, and in the crates along the walls, God only knew what else. He picked up the journal again, hands shaking, and read the last entry. December 23rd, 2018. This is my final entry. I am dying. The doctors give me weeks, maybe days. I have made my peace with God, though I do not know if He has made His peace with me. Inside this vault are 73 items. Paintings, sculptures, documents, artifacts, all recovered from Nazi hordes between 1944 and 1946, all supposed to be returned to their rightful owners or museums. But the chaos after the war, the bureaucracy, the corruption, I saw pieces disappear into private collections, sold on black markets, destroyed by ignorance. I could not let that happen to these. So I kept them. I hid them. I protected them. And I have lived with the weight of that decision every day since. If you are reading this, you have found them. I do not know who you are, but I beg you, do not let greed consume you. These are not treasures to be sold. They are pieces of souls stolen from families, from cultures, from history. They deserve to go home. I failed to return them in life. Perhaps you can succeed where I could not. Forgive me. Captain Raymond Drescher. Marcus sat in the vault for a long time, surrounded by stolen beauty, holding the confession of a dead man, and trying to understand what he had just inherited. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the boarded windows. Somewhere in the distance, a branch cracked and fell. The cabin groaned softly, as if acknowledging the secret it had kept for so many decades. Marcus finally stood, legs unsteady, and climbed the stairs back into the main room. The fire had burned low, just embers now. He added another log and watched the flames rise. He thought about the $850 he'd paid. He thought about Tyler, who would arrive tomorrow. He thought about the paintings in the vault below, each one worth more money than he could comprehend. Enough to solve every problem he had, enough to start over, to be the father he wanted to be, to reclaim the life that had been taken from him. But he also thought about Drescher's final words. Do not let greed consume you. They deserve to go home. Marcus pulled out his phone. No signal. Of course not. He was too far up the mountain. He'd have to drive down tomorrow, figure out who to call, what to do. The FBI? A museum? He had no idea. He looked around the cabin, this place that had seemed worthless just hours ago, and realized he was standing in the middle of something far bigger than himself. This wasn't just about money or survival anymore. This was about right and wrong, about history, about the souls of people who had been robbed of beauty and heritage 75 years ago. And for the first time in 3 years, since the moment that tree had crushed his knee and his future, Marcus Hayes felt something he'd almost forgotten. Purpose. He sat in Drescher's leather armchair, journal in his lap, fire crackling, and waited for morning. Because tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, his son would arrive. And together, they would have to decide what to do with a secret worth $265 million and the weight of a soldier's 71-year-old guilt. The cabin settled around him, timbers creaking, as if exhaling after decades of holding its breath. Marcus closed his eyes, exhausted but unable to sleep, and wondered if Raymond Drescher's ghost was watching, hoping, praying that this time someone would finally do the right thing. Marcus woke with his neck stiff, still sitting in Drescher's leather armchair. Dawn light filtered through cracks in the boarded windows, painting thin lines across the dusty floor. The fire had died to ash. For a moment, he forgot where he was. Then it all came rushing back. The vault, the paintings, the journal, the impossible weight of what he'd found. He stood slowly, his bad knee protesting, and walked to the kitchen. He splashed cold water on his face from the jug he'd brought, then checked his phone. Still no signal. Tyler was supposed to arrive by noon, driven up by Jennifer. Marcus needed to clean up, needed to figure out what to tell his son, needed to think. But first, he needed to see it again, to confirm it wasn't a dream. He descended into the basement, lantern in hand, and stood before the open vault door. In the morning light seeping through a small ground-level window, the paintings looked even more surreal. The Vermeer woman's face seemed to follow him. The Van Gogh landscape pulsed with tortured energy. He counted the frames carefully. 43 paintings visible, plus the wooden crates stacked along the walls, still unopened. Marcus approached one of the crates and examined the label, stenciled in black ink. Property of the Third Reich. Recovered Munich, May 1945. Contents: religious artifacts, origin unknown, handle with extreme care. He found a flathead screwdriver in his tool bag and carefully pried open the crate. Inside, wrapped in oiled cloth, were objects that took his breath away. A golden chalice encrusted with rubies, a silver menorah, tarnished but intact. An illuminated manuscript in a language he couldn't read, the pages still vibrant with color. Each item had a small tag tied to it with string, written in Drescher's precise handwriting. Synagogue, Prague. Family name, Weiss. Disappeared, 1942. Marcus's hands trembled as he rewrapped the items. These weren't just valuable objects. They were pieces of people's lives, stolen during humanity's darkest hour, hidden away by a soldier who couldn't bear to see them lost forever. He closed the crate and climbed back upstairs. He needed to start documenting everything, taking photos, making lists. But his phone was nearly dead, and he had no way to charge it up here. No electricity. He'd have to go old school, paper and pen. He found a notebook in the desk upstairs and began making an inventory, working from memory. Vermeer, possible original. Van Gogh, landscape. Raphael, portrait. Artifacts, Jewish origin. Prague. With each entry, the magnitude of what he'd inherited grew heavier. Around 11 in the morning, Marcus heard the sound of tires on gravel. He walked to the front window and peered through a gap in the boards. Jennifer's silver SUV rolled into the clearing, dust trailing behind it. The vehicle stopped and Tyler stepped out. Marcus's chest tightened. His son had grown since he'd last seen him a month ago. Taller, shoulders broader, face harder. He wore a black hoodie and jeans, hands shoved in his pockets, expression carefully blank. Jennifer said something through the window that Marcus couldn't hear. Tyler nodded without looking at her, grabbed a backpack from the rear seat and shut the door. The SUV turned around and disappeared down the mountain road. Tyler stood alone in the clearing, staring at the cabin like it was a prison sentence. Marcus opened the front door and stepped onto the sagging porch. "Hey, Ty." Tyler looked up, his face unreadable. "This is the project? This place looks like it's about to collapse." "Yeah, well, it's got good bones," Marcus said, trying to sound confident. Needs work, but I got it for a good price. Tyler walked toward the cabin slowly, eyes scanning the boarded windows, the cracked chimney, the tilting porch. How much? $850. Tyler's eyebrows rose slightly. That's it? What's wrong with it? No electricity, no running water, middle of nowhere. Take your pick. Marcus stepped aside to let Tyler pass. But it's solid. Come see. Tyler climbed the steps carefully, testing each one like he expected it to give way. He walked inside and stopped, looking around the main room. Marcus had cleaned up some since last night, pulled the sheets off furniture, swept the floor. The space looked almost livable. It's bigger than I thought, Tyler admitted, setting his backpack down. 2 bedrooms upstairs, full basement, Marcus said. The previous owner lived here for almost 40 years. Alone? Marcus nodded. Guy named Drescher died last winter. Tyler walked to the fireplace and ran his hand along the stone. So, what's the plan? You gonna live up here? I don't know yet. Maybe fix it up and sell it. Maybe keep it as a workshop. Marcus paused. I was hoping you could help me assess what needs doing. You've always had a good eye for structure. It was true. Tyler had spent hours as a kid watching Marcus work on construction sites, asking questions, learning the trade. Before the accident, before everything fell apart, they'd built a treehouse together in the backyard of their old house. Tyler had designed half of it himself. Tyler shrugged, the teenage mask slipping just slightly. I guess I could look around. Good. I already started a list, but I need a second opinion. They spent the next hour walking through the cabin together. Marcus showed Tyler the solid beams, the intact foundation, the surprisingly functional fireplace. Tyler pointed out water damage in one corner of the ceiling, a window frame that had rotted through, floor joists that would need reinforcing. They worked through the checklist methodically, and Marcus noticed Tyler's shoulders relaxing, his voice losing some of its edge. This was familiar territory. This was something they both understood. In the kitchen, Tyler opened a cabinet and found the neatly stacked dishes. This guy really lived here. It doesn't look abandoned. I know, Marcus said. It's strange, like he was just here. Tyler pulled out a coffee mug, turned it over. Why would someone live up here alone for 40 years? Marcus hesitated. This was the moment. He could tell Tyler everything right now. The vault, the paintings, the journal. Or he could wait, ease him into it. He decided on somewhere in between. I found some of his stuff, Marcus said. Books, journals. He was military. World War II. Tyler's interest sparked. Really? Like a veteran? More than that. He was part of a special unit, the Monuments Men. They recovered stolen art from the Nazis. Tyler set down the mug. That's actually kind of cool. Did he write about it? Marcus nodded. There's a journal. I was reading it last night. Some pretty intense stuff. Can I see it? Marcus retrieved the leather journal from upstairs and handed it to Tyler. They sat together at the kitchen table while Tyler flipped through the pages, reading entries aloud. Marcus watched his son's face as he absorbed Drescher's words, saw the curiosity replacing the resentment, saw the wall between them starting to crack. This guy was carrying some heavy stuff, Tyler said quietly, reading an entry from 1978 about nightmares and guilt. He talks about items he recovered but never returned. Do you think they're still somewhere? Marcus felt his heart rate increase. What makes you say that? Tyler pointed to a passage. Here, he says, the weight of what I keep below grows heavier each year. Below. That's weird wording. Below what? Marcus stood. I need to show you something, but you have to promise me you won't freak out. Tyler looked up, suddenly wary. Dad, what did you find? Just promise me, and promise me this stays between us until we figure out what to do. Tyler closed the journal slowly. Okay, I promise. Marcus led him to the basement door. Tyler followed, confusion mixing with apprehension. They descended the narrow stairs, and Marcus showed him the false wall he'd pried open, the steel vault door behind it. Tyler's eyes went wide. What the hell? I found it last night. After you texted me back, actually. The journal had the combination hidden in it. Is it open? Marcus nodded and pushed the heavy door. It swung inward with that same hydraulic hiss. Tyler stepped forward, peering into the darkness. Marcus raised the lantern. The paintings gleamed in the lamplight. Tyler walked into the vault slowly, mouth open, eyes darting from frame to frame. He stopped in front of the Vermeer, staring at the woman in blue. "Dad," he whispered, "is this real?" "I think so." Tyler turned to look at the other paintings, the crates, the careful labels. "How much is all this worth?" "I don't know exactly, but the journal mentions 73 items total. If even half of these are authentic originals..." Marcus trailed off. "A lot. More than we can imagine." Tyler ran his hand through his hair, a gesture so much like Marcus's own that it made his chest ache. "We have to tell someone. The police, a museum, someone." "I know, but I wanted you to see it first. This is, I don't know, maybe the most important thing that'll ever happen to us, and I wanted us to face it together." Tyler looked at his father, really looked at him, for the first time in months. "What do you want to do?" Marcus pulled out the journal and opened to the last entry. Drescher's final words. He's asking whoever finds this to return the pieces to their rightful owners, not to sell them, not to keep them, to do what he couldn't. "But we could," Tyler said quietly. "We could keep them, or sell them. No one knows they're here except us." "I know." They stood in silence, surrounded by stolen beauty, facing the same choice Drescher had faced 70 years ago. Finally, Tyler spoke. "What would the right thing be, like really?" Marcus smiled faintly. "That's the question, isn't it?" They spent the rest of the afternoon documenting what they could. Marcus drove down the mountain far enough to get a signal and called Jennifer, told her everything was fine, asked if Tyler could stay an extra day. She agreed, suspicion in her voice, but didn't push. He stopped at a small library in Ridgeline and printed out everything he could find about Raymond Drescher. What he found was sparse but illuminating. Drescher had been born in Pennsylvania in 1928, enlisted at 17 with his parents' permission, and served in Europe from 1944 to 1946. He'd been assigned to the Monuments, Fine Arts and Archives program in 1945, working under Captain Robert Posey. After the war, he'd returned to the States, attended college on the GI Bill, then seemingly vanished from public record in 1951. There were no marriage records, no children, no employment history after a brief stint teaching art history at a community college. Just a Social Security number that showed up in Colorado tax records starting in 1968 and continuing until his death in February of 2019. At the library, Marcus also found a local newspaper article from March of 2019. The headline read, "Hermit Found Dead in Mountain Cabin." The article was brief. A hiker had noticed buzzards circling and called authorities. Sheriff's deputies had broken into the cabin and found Drescher's body in his bed, peaceful, a journal on the nightstand. No foul play suspected, no next of kin located. Estate to be sold at county auction to cover back taxes. Marcus stared at that last line. Back taxes. The man had been sitting on a fortune worth hundreds of millions of dollars and had died owing the county money. What happens next will turn this weekend into something neither father nor son could ever imagine, reveal a moral choice that will test everything they believe, and remind us that some treasures are worth far more than money. Stay tuned to see what happens next. If you're enjoying the story, please like, share, and subscribe for more. Back at the cabin that evening, Marcus and Tyler sat by the fire eating sandwiches Marcus had picked up in town. Tyler had been quiet since they'd left the vault, processing everything. Finally, he spoke. "I asked around town while you were at the library." Marcus looked up. "About Drescher?" Tyler nodded. "The guy at the gas station knew him. Said Drescher came down the mountain once a month for supplies. Never talked much. Paid cash. Always bought the same things. Canned food, batteries, fuel, books, lots of books." "Did he say anything else?" "Yeah. He said people used to think Drescher was hiding from something. Some thought he was in witness protection. Others thought he'd done something bad in the war and was laying low. Nobody really knew. Marcus poked the fire, sending sparks up the chimney. He was hiding something, just not what they thought. Tyler pulled the journal closer and opened to a random page. Listen to this. It's from 1983. Today I drove past the Denver Art Museum. I saw families inside, children pointing at paintings, learning, wondering, experiencing beauty. I almost went in, almost confessed everything. But I looked at the modern security, the cameras, the corporate donors, and I thought about what would happen to these pieces if I turned them over, catalogued, appraised, fought over by lawyers and governments, locked in climate-controlled storage for decades while bureaucrats decide their fate. And I drove home. God forgive me, I drove home. Tyler looked up. He didn't trust the system. Can you blame him? Marcus asked. Look what happened after the war. Art disappeared into private collections. Museums stonewalled families asking for their property back. Countries fought over who owned what. Drescher saw all that. He was trying to protect these things until there was a better way. But there has to be a better way now, Tyler insisted. It's been 75 years. There are organizations that do this, that reunite families with stolen art. I saw a documentary about it. Marcus nodded. You're probably right. But the second we make a phone call, this becomes bigger than us. The FBI will come, lawyers, museums, the media, and we'll have no control over what happens next. Is that a bad thing? I don't know. Maybe not. But I keep thinking about what Drescher wrote, about doing this right, about making sure these pieces actually get home, not just stuck in another vault somewhere. Tyler was quiet for a long moment. Can I ask you something? Sure. If these were just regular paintings like prints or copies, would you still care this much about where they went? Marcus considered the question. Honestly, probably not. Then it's not really about doing the right thing, is it? It's about the value. About knowing we're sitting on a fortune and trying to convince ourselves we're noble for not taking it. The words stung because they were true. Marcus had spent the last 24 hours telling himself this was about honor, about history, about respecting Drescher's wishes. But underneath it all, he couldn't stop thinking about what that money could do. The debt it would erase, the life it would give back, the father he could be if he wasn't drowning in bills and shame. You're right, Marcus admitted. I'm not going to pretend the money doesn't matter. Of course it does. We're broke, Ty. I'm 2 months behind on child support. Your mom had to take you school shopping because I couldn't afford it. This could change everything for us. So why don't we just sell them? Because Drescher asked us not to, and because these paintings don't belong to us. They were stolen from families who were murdered, from museums that were looted, from a culture that was nearly destroyed. And somewhere out there might still be people whose grandparents once owned these things, people who deserve to see them again. Tyler stared into the fire. That's a really hard thing to choose when we need the money so badly. I know. They sat in silence, the weight of the decision pressing down on them both. Finally, Tyler spoke again. What if there's a middle ground? Marcus looked at him. What do you mean? Drescher's journal said he kept these because he didn't trust what would happen to them. But what if we found a way to return them ourselves? Not through the FBI or museums or governments, but directly to the families, or to communities that could actually use them. Marcus felt something shift in his chest. You mean like private repatriation? Yeah. We document everything, research where each piece came from, find out who it belonged to, and give it back ourselves. No lawyers, no bureaucracy, just us doing what Drescher wanted but couldn't. That would take years. And we don't have the resources to authenticate all this, to track down families, to transport priceless artwork across the world. Tyler leaned forward. But what if we did it with just one piece? As a test, to see if it's even possible. If we can return one painting to its rightful home, maybe we figure out how to do the rest. Marcus looked at his son, seeing something he hadn't seen in years. Purpose, passion. The same fire that used to light up Tyler's face when they built that treehouse together, when they worked side by side and felt like a team. "That's actually not a bad idea," Marcus said slowly. "Start small, prove the concept." Tyler grabbed the journal and started flipping through pages. Some of these entries mention specific locations where things were taken from. If we can match a piece to a place, maybe we can find the family. They spent the next 2 hours going through the journal together, cross-referencing entries with the items in the vault. Tyler took notes while Marcus carefully examined each painting and artifact. The golden chalice from Prague, the menorah with the Weiss family name. A small painting of a village square that Drescher had noted came from a private home in Amsterdam, family name Levi. "This one," Tyler said, pointing to the Amsterdam entry. "It's small, portable," and he wrote down the address where he found it. "Prinsengracht 267. We could start here." Marcus walked down to the vault and found the painting Tyler referenced. It was modest, maybe 12 inches by 16 inches, oil on canvas. The village square was rendered in warm colors, people going about their daily lives, children playing near a fountain. In the corner, a signature, H. Levi, 1936. "A family painting," Marcus said. "Not a masterwork, just someone painting their world." "Which means it probably mattered to them even more," Tyler said. "This was someone's memory, someone's home." Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. When had he last cried? Not since the accident. Not since he'd lost everything. But standing there holding a painting of a world that no longer existed, painted by someone who probably didn't survive the war, he felt the enormity of it all crash over him. "Okay," he said, voice rough. "Let's try. Let's see if we can find the Levi family and return this to them." Tyler smiled, a real smile, the first Marcus had seen in months. "Yeah? Yeah, but we're going to need help. Research, translation, travel. This isn't going to be cheap or easy." "We'll figure it out," Tyler said. "Together." They stayed up late into the night, planning, researching on Marcus's phone when he could get a signal down the road, taking notes, building a strategy. For the first time since the divorce, since the accident, since everything fell apart, Marcus and his son were working towards something together. Not just surviving. Building. Around midnight, Tyler fell asleep on the couch, journal still open in his lap. Marcus covered him with a blanket and sat in Drescher's chair, watching his son breathe, watching the fire die down to embers. He thought about the choice in front of them. The easy path would be to call the authorities, hand everything over, walk away. Maybe get a finder's fee, maybe get nothing. Let the system sort it out. The hard path was the one Tyler suggested. Take responsibility themselves. Become the guardians Drescher never had the courage to be publicly. Do the work of returning these pieces one by one, family by family, until every stolen treasure found its way home. It would take years. It would consume their lives. It might fail completely. But for the first time in 3 years, Marcus Hayes had something worth waking up for. Something bigger than his pain, his regret, his broken knee and broken marriage. He had purpose, and he had his son beside him, fighting for something that mattered. Outside, the wind moved through the pines. The cabin creaked and settled, and somewhere in the darkness, Marcus felt Raymond Drescher's presence, not haunting, but hoping. Hoping that finally, after 71 years, someone would finish what he'd started. Marcus closed his eyes and made a promise to a dead soldier and to himself and to the ghosts of families who'd lost everything. They would do this right, no matter how long it took, no matter what it cost. Because some debts can only be repaid in truth, in effort, in the slow, painful work of making amends for history's sins. And Marcus Hayes, broken firefighter turned carpenter, father trying to reconnect with his son, was ready to begin. The morning after their decision, Marcus woke to find Tyler already in the vault. His son sat cross-legged on the concrete floor, surrounded by open crates, carefully examining items with the flashlight from his phone. The sight stopped Marcus in the doorway. Tyler looked like an archaeologist uncovering ancient secrets, reverent and focused. "How long have you been down here?" Marcus asked. Tyler didn't look up. Since 6, I couldn't sleep. Dad, there's so much more than we thought. Marcus descended the stairs and knelt beside his son. Tyler had organized items from the crates into careful rows. Religious artifacts, dozens of them. Menorahs, Torah scrolls in protective cases, silver candlesticks, prayer shawls, each one tagged with Drescher's meticulous notes. There's a pattern, Tyler said, pointing to the tags. He organized everything by location: Prague, Amsterdam, Paris, Warsaw, Vienna, and he wrote down everything he could remember about where he found them. Look at this one. Tyler held up a small wooden box, intricately carved with Hebrew letters. The tag read, "Recovered from train depot Dachau, May 11th, 1945. Contents: family Shabbat set, belongs to Goldstein family, bakers from Munich. Children's names carved inside lid: Sarah, David, Rebecca." Marcus opened the box carefully. Inside, wrapped in yellowed cloth, were 2 small silver cups and a kiddush plate. And carved into the inside of the lid, just as Drescher had noted, were 3 names in childish script. "They were kids when they carved this," Tyler whispered. "Maybe our age. Younger." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "And they're probably dead. All of them." Maybe, but maybe not. Maybe one of them survived. Maybe they had children, grandchildren. Maybe someone out there is looking for this without even knowing it still exists. They continued cataloguing through the morning. The scope of what Drescher had hidden was staggering. 73 items, just as the journal had stated, but the value was beyond anything Marcus had imagined. In one crate, beneath layers of protective wrapping, they found gold bars. 12 of them, each stamped with Nazi eagles and serial numbers. Drescher's note was brief. Reichsbank reserves, origin uncertain, held for proper disposition. Tyler lifted one, struggling with the weight. "How much is one of these worth?" "At today's prices, maybe $500,000 each." Tyler set it down carefully. "So that's $6 million just in gold." "At least." They found documents too: letters, ledgers, photographs. One folder contained correspondence between Drescher and various museums from the 1950s and 60s. Marcus read through them slowly, and a picture began to emerge. Drescher had tried to return items. In 1952, he'd contacted the Louvre about a painting he'd recovered. The response was bureaucratic and cold. Provide proof of provenance, documentation of recovery, authentication certificates, legal transfer documents. Things Drescher didn't have because he'd taken the items during the chaos of liberation, when proper paperwork was impossible. Another letter from 1957 showed Drescher attempting to return a Torah scroll to a synagogue in Amsterdam. The synagogue had responded that without the original rabbi's certification and community records, all destroyed in the war, they couldn't accept it. They suggested he donate it to a museum instead. Drescher's handwritten notes in the margins told the story of his frustration. They want bureaucracy when bureaucracy murdered the owners. They want proof when proof was burned. They want me to trust the same institutions that failed to protect these people in the first place. He was stuck, Marcus said, showing Tyler the letters. He couldn't just hand them over because the system didn't know how to receive them, and he couldn't keep them without guilt eating him alive. Tyler read through more of the correspondence. So he built this vault, preserved everything, and waited for what? For the world to change? Or for the right person to find them? They sat in silence, the weight of that responsibility settling over them like snow. Finally, Tyler spoke. "We need to fully inventory everything. Every piece, every tag, every note. If we're really going to try to return these things, we need to know exactly what we have." For the next 3 days, they worked. Marcus called Jennifer and explained he needed Tyler for the week. There was important work at the cabin. She'd been suspicious, asking questions he deflected. But eventually she agreed, hearing something in his voice that made her hesitate before arguing. They created a detailed spreadsheet on Tyler's laptop. Item number, description, Drescher's notes, estimated origin, condition, possible value. The paintings alone ranged from works by minor artists to pieces that, if authenticated, would be worth tens of millions each. The Vermeer, 2 Rembrandts, the Raphael, A small Monet, a Picasso from his blue period. Masters and minor artists alike, all stolen, all hidden. The artifacts were equally valuable, but in different ways. A golden menorah that might have stood in a synagogue for generations. A collection of rare books, some illuminated manuscripts from the 15th century. A sculpture, small but exquisite, possibly Renaissance Italian. Jewelry, not the ostentatious kind, but pieces clearly crafted with love. A wedding ring with an inscription in Yiddish. A locket containing photos of children who never grew up. By the fourth day, they'd catalogued everything. The total estimated value, if they'd calculated correctly using online auction records and museum appraisals they could find, was $265 million. Tyler stared at the number on his screen. That can't be right. Check the math again. Marcus did. It was right, possibly even conservative. They sat at the kitchen table as evening fell, a kerosene lamp casting shadows on the walls. Neither of them spoke for a long time. The silence was heavy with implications, with choices, with the future branching in two very different directions. Finally, Marcus said what they were both thinking. We could take it, all of it. Sell it piece by piece over years, different countries, different dealers. We'd never have to work again. We could give you the education you deserve. I could pay back your mother, get my knee fixed properly, start over. Tyler nodded slowly. We could. Drescher would never know. He's dead. No one knows this stuff exists except us. We found it legally. The cabin's ours. By any reasonable interpretation of property law, this is ours too. Probably, Tyler agreed. Another long silence. But we'd know, Tyler finally said. Every time we spent $1 of it, we'd know where it came from. We'd know whose wedding ring we sold, whose family menorah, whose painting of home. Marcus rubbed his face with both hands. I know. God, I know. And I think it would destroy us, Tyler continued, his voice quiet but firm. Maybe not right away. Maybe we'd convince ourselves it was fine, that we deserved it, that Drescher's guilt doesn't have to be ours. But eventually, I think it would poison everything. Every good thing we bought with that money would be built on someone else's suffering. Marcus looked at his son, really looked at him, and saw a young man with more integrity than he'd given him credit for. More integrity, maybe, than Marcus had himself. When did you get so wise? Marcus asked. Tyler gave a small smile. I had a good teacher, once, before things got hard. Marcus felt tears threaten. I'm sorry, Ty, for everything. For the accident, for the divorce, for not being the dad you needed. You're being him now, Tyler said. Right now, in this moment, asking me what I think, treating me like a partner, caring about doing the right thing, even when it costs us everything. This is the dad I remember. They sat together in the lamplight, father and son, broke and broken, sitting on a fortune they'd already decided not to keep. So we return them, Marcus said. It wasn't a question. We return them, Tyler confirmed. All of them, somehow. They spent that evening planning. The first step would be authentication. They needed experts to verify these pieces were genuine before they could begin the process of repatriation. But experts meant exposure, meant the secret getting out. Marcus remembered something Drescher had written about a colleague from his Monuments Men days, a man named Dr. Samuel Hirsch, who'd helped catalogue recovered items in Munich. Marcus searched online and found an obituary from 2012. Hirsch had died at 93, but he'd had a daughter. Dr. Rebecca Hirsch-Cohen, now a professor of art history at Columbia University, specializing in Nazi-looted art recovery. She might help us, Marcus said, showing Tyler the faculty page. Her father worked with Drescher. She's dedicated her career to this. How do we contact her without telling her everything? We don't. We tell her everything. And we trust that if she's anything like her father, she'll understand why this has to be done carefully. Tyler hesitated. Once we tell someone, we lose control. You know that, right? I know. But we can't do this alone, and if we're going to trust someone, it should be someone who spent their life trying to fix what the Nazis broke. That night, Marcus composed an email on Tyler's laptop. He wrote it carefully, choosing each word with precision. Dr. Hirsch-Cohen, You don't know me, but I believe your father knew a colleague of mine, Captain Raymond Drescher, U.S. Army Monuments, Fine Arts and Archives Program. Captain Drescher passed away earlier this year and left behind a collection of items he recovered during and immediately after World War II. Items he was never able to return to their rightful owners. I've recently acquired Captain Drescher's property and discovered these items. I am not an expert, but I believe they may be significant. I am writing to you because I need guidance on how to properly handle their repatriation. This is not about profit or publicity. This is about finishing what your father and Captain Drescher started. If you're willing to help, I can provide more details, but I'm asking for discretion until we understand the full scope of what we're dealing with. Respectfully, Marcus Hayes. He read it 3 times, then looked at Tyler. Too much? Too little? Send it, Tyler said, before we change our minds. Marcus hit send at 11:47 that night. Then they waited. The response came 18 hours later. Marcus was outside splitting firewood when Tyler ran from the cabin, laptop in hand. Dad, she responded. They sat on the porch steps together, reading. Mr. Hayes, my father spoke of Raymond Drescher many times before he died. He considered Ray one of the most dedicated and tormented men he'd ever known. A man who saved treasures but couldn't save himself from the weight of them. If what you're telling me is true, this could be one of the most significant discoveries in the field of art repatriation in decades. But you're right to be cautious. There are many people, institutions, governments, and individuals who would seek to control or exploit such a discovery. I can be in Colorado in 3 days. I'll come alone. I'll sign whatever non-disclosure agreements you require. But if these items are what I think they might be, we'll need to move carefully and quickly. The world has been looking for these pieces for 75 years. Dr. Rebecca Hirsch Cohen. Marcus let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. She's coming. Are we really doing this? Tyler asked. We're really doing this. But that night, everything changed. Marcus was in the basement rewrapping one of the paintings when he heard tires on gravel. He checked his watch. 10:30. No one should be coming up here, especially not at night. He killed the lantern and moved quietly upstairs. Tyler was at the window, peering through the boards. Dad, there's a truck out there. Big one, not like Mom's SUV. Marcus looked. A black pickup sat in the clearing, headlights off but engine running. 2 men stood beside it, both large, both dressed in dark clothing. One of them pointed toward the cabin. The other nodded and started walking toward the porch. Get away from the window, Marcus whispered. Now. They moved to the back of the cabin. Marcus's mind raced. Who were these people? How did they know to come here? A knock on the door, heavy, authoritative. Marcus Hayes? A man's voice, rough and confident. We know you're in there, we just want to talk. Marcus didn't respond. He pulled Tyler toward the kitchen where he'd left his tool bag. Inside, underneath the screwdrivers and wrenches, was something he'd brought but hoped never to use. A pistol, his service weapon from his firefighting days when they'd worked in areas with aggressive wildlife. The knock came again, harder. Mr. Hayes, my name is Garrett Voss. I'm a private acquisitions specialist. I represent collectors who are very interested in items that may be on this property. I'm prepared to make you a very generous offer. Marcus chambered around quietly. Tyler's eyes went wide, but Marcus shook his head. Just a precaution. I'm not interested, Marcus called out. Leave the property, now. A pause, then laughter. Mr. Hayes, I don't think you understand the situation. The man who owned this cabin before you, Captain Drescher, he made some promises before he died. Promises to certain parties about the disposition of his collection. Now, those parties are willing to be reasonable, but they will have what they were promised. Drescher's will was clear, Marcus lied. Everything on this property belongs to me legally. Legal is such a flexible concept, Voss replied, especially when dealing with stolen property. And make no mistake, everything in that basement is stolen. Which means you're currently in possession of stolen goods. That's a crime, Mr. Hayes, unless, of course, you're willing to work with us. Marcus felt cold sweat on his neck. How did they know about the basement? About the items? As if reading his mind, Voss continued. Captain Drescher wasn't as alone as he thought. He had visitors over the years, people who helped him, people who kept his secret, people who are now owed payment for that service. Tyler grabbed Marcus's arm. Dad, what do we do? Marcus made a decision. He moved to the front door but didn't open it. Who sent you? Does it matter? I represent buyers who will pay fair market value. $20 million, Mr. Hayes. Cash. For everything in that vault. You walk away rich. We get what we came for. Everyone wins. 20 million. Less than a tenth of what it was worth, but still more money than Marcus would see in 10 lifetimes. He thought about Tyler's college fund, about the medical bills, about starting over. Then he thought about the Goldstein children's names carved in that box, about families waiting 75 years for answers, about Drescher's final plea. No, Marcus said, not for sale. The silence that followed was heavy with menace. That's disappointing, Voss finally said. I was hoping you'd be reasonable. My employers don't respond well to disappointment. Then tell your employers they can go to hell. This property is mine. The items are mine. And they're staying that way until I decide otherwise. Now get off my land before I call the sheriff. Voss laughed again. The sheriff. Right. You do that, Mr. Hayes. And when he arrives, you can explain to him where you got $265 million in stolen Nazi gold and artwork. I'm sure that'll go well for you. The footsteps retreated. The truck doors slammed, the engine revved, and the vehicle pulled away, but slowly, deliberately. A message. We know where you are. We'll be back. Marcus and Tyler stood in the dark cabin, hearts pounding, until the sound of the truck faded completely. Then Marcus checked the locks, wedged chairs under door handles, and made sure every window was secure. How did they know? Tyler asked, voice shaking. How did they know what's down there? Marcus pulled out Drescher's journal and started reading with new eyes. There had to be clues, references to people who'd helped him, people who knew. He found it in an entry from 2010. Martin came by today, still asking about the collection, still offering to broker sales to private buyers. I refused, as always, but he's getting more insistent, more threatening. He says if I don't sell before I die, his associates will simply take it after. I told him I've made arrangements, that the property will be sold at auction, that the new owner will have legal claim, that taking anything would be theft. He laughed at me, said the law doesn't apply to people like them. I'm afraid of what will happen when I'm gone. But I can't give in now. Not after all these years. Martin, Marcus said. Drescher mentioned someone named Martin, a broker who wanted to buy the collection. Tyler searched on his laptop. Martin Voss, here. Art dealer based in Denver, specializes in, quote, discreet acquisitions for private collectors, unquote. That's got to be related to Garrett Voss. Father and son, maybe? Marcus's stomach sank. These people had been circling Drescher for years, and now they thought Marcus was an easy target, a broke carpenter who'd stumble onto a fortune and be too desperate or too stupid to say no. They'd miscalculated. We called Dr. Hirsch Cohen, Marcus said, tonight, and we move faster than we planned. Tyler was already typing an email. The next morning, Marcus drove down to Ridgeline and went to the sheriff's office. Deputy Frank Morales, who'd gone to high school with Marcus's younger brother, sat behind the desk eating a breakfast burrito. Marcus Hayes, Frank said, wiping salsa from his chin. Heard you bought the old Drescher place. How's that going? Had some trouble last night. 2 men showed up making threats, trying to get me to sell them items from the property. Frank's expression shifted. What kind of items? Personal effects, estate stuff. I'm not selling, but they were aggressive about it. You get names? One of them said his name was Garrett Voss. Ring any bells? Frank's face darkened. Yeah, the Voss family. They're bad news, Marcus. Martin Voss runs an art gallery in Denver, but everyone knows it's a front. He brokers stolen property for collectors. His son Garrett does the muscle work. If they're sniffing around your property, you've got something they want. What can I do? Frank leaned back in his chair. Legally, Not much unless they trespass again or make explicit threats. But off the record, whatever's in that cabin that they want, you should either give it to them or get it the hell out of there. The Vosses don't play games. Marcus felt anger rising. So I should just roll over? Let them intimidate me into giving up my property? I'm saying pick your battles. Drescher didn't have family, didn't have anyone to protect him. But you've got a kid. You've got a life. Is whatever's up there worth risking that? Marcus stood. Thanks for the advice, Frank. Marcus, I'm serious. Be careful. Back at the cabin, Marcus found Tyler had been busy. He'd printed out emails from Dr. Hirsch-Cohen, who'd moved up her visit. She'd arrived tomorrow, flying into Denver and driving up. She'd also connected them with 2 other experts, both trusted colleagues, who could help with authentication and provenance research. She's taking this seriously, Tyler said. She also warned us that once word gets out, we'll be dealing with pressure from everywhere. Museums will want the pieces. Governments will claim ownership. Families will come forward, some legitimate, some not. It's going to be chaos. Then we need to be ready, Marcus said. He told Tyler about the conversation with Deputy Morales, about the Voss family's reputation. Tyler's face paled. Maybe we should just call the FBI now, get protection. And tell them what? That we have a vault full of Nazi-looted art that the previous owner hid for 70 years? That we've been sitting on it for a week without reporting it? We'd be suspects, Ty. They'd seize everything, and we'd have 0 say in what happens next. But at least we'd be safe. Marcus put his hand on his son's shoulder. I won't let anything happen to you, I promise. But we do this right. Dr. Hirsch-Cohen arrives tomorrow. We authenticate what we can. We build our case for how these items should be returned. And then, and only then, we contact the authorities with a plan, not just a confession. That night, they took turns keeping watch. Marcus sat on the porch with his pistol, listening to the forest sounds, watching for headlights that never came. Tyler slept fitfully inside, waking every hour to check that his father was still there. Around 3 a.m, Marcus heard something. Not a vehicle. Footsteps. Soft, careful, moving through the trees. He stood slowly, gripping the weapon, eyes scanning the darkness. The moon was bright enough to cast shadows, and in those shadows, something moved. I know you're out there, Marcus called out. This is private property. Show yourself or leave. A figure stepped into the moonlight. It wasn't Garrett Voss. It was an older man, maybe 70, thin and weathered, wearing a canvas jacket and hiking boots. Don't shoot, the man said, hands raised. I'm not here to cause trouble. Then what are you doing sneaking around my property at 3 a.m? The man took a cautious step closer. My name is Arthur Brennan. I knew Raymond Drescher. I'm the one who found his body last winter. Marcus kept the gun steady. Keep talking. I'm a retired forest ranger. I used to check on Ray every few weeks, bring him supplies, make sure he was okay. He was a friend, or as close to a friend as he'd let anyone be. Arthur lowered his hands slowly. I heard you bought the place at auction. And I heard the Vosses have been asking around town about you. I wanted to warn you. I've already been warned. Not like this, Arthur said. Martin Voss tried to buy the cabin at auction. He had a proxy bidder ready, but the bidder never showed up. You got it for $850 because Martin was counting on no competition. When he found out someone else bought it, he lost his mind. I heard him in the diner in town, making calls, saying whoever bought that property had no idea what they'd stepped into. Marcus lowered the gun slightly. How much does he know about what's inside? Arthur smiled sadly. Everything. Ray told me once near the end that Martin had been hounding him for 20 years, offering to sell the collection piece by piece to private buyers, promising Ray they'd go to good homes, to people who'd appreciate them. But Ray didn't trust him. Didn't trust anyone. Except you? I never asked Ray for anything except to keep living. When I'd visit, we'd sit and drink coffee and talk about anything except what was in that basement. He appreciated that. Not being seen as a gatekeeper to treasure, just being seen as a man. Marcus felt the tension ease slightly. Why are you really here? Arthur looked toward the cabin. Because when I found Ray's body, I also found a letter, addressed to whoever bought this place. He'd left it on his nightstand. I took it. I know I shouldn't have, but I didn't trust the county to handle it properly. I've been waiting for the right person to give it to. He reached into his jacket slowly and pulled out an envelope, yellowed with age. On it, written in Drescher's script, to the new owner. Read this first. Marcus took the envelope, hands trembling. You could have given this to me weeks ago. I had to make sure you were the right person. I've been watching. I saw you and your boy working together. Saw you talking about the items with respect, not greed. Saw you turn down the Vosses. That's when I knew. Marcus opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper, covered in Drescher's handwriting. To whoever reads this, if you're holding this letter, then I'm gone. And if you're holding it, you've also found what I spent my life protecting and agonizing over. I don't know who you are. I don't know if you're a good person or an opportunist, but I'm going to choose to believe you're good. Because I have to believe, even now, that good people still exist. What you found is not a treasure, it's a burden. It's guilt made tangible. It's the weight of choices made in chaos, justified by fear and regretted in silence. I took these items to protect them, but in protecting them, I stole them twice. Once from the Nazis who stole them first, and again from the families who should have received them back. I failed them. I failed everyone, but you don't have to. If you're reading this, you have a choice I never had the courage to make. You can do what I couldn't. You can return these pieces to the world, not for profit, not for glory, but for the simple, painful reason that it's right. There's a woman, Dr. Rebecca Hirsch-Cohen. Her father was my friend. She's dedicated her life to fixing what we left broken. Trust her. Give her access to everything. Let her help you do what I was too afraid to do. And please, please don't let the Vosses win. They've been circling for years, promising me wealth and discretion. But they deal with monsters. They sell to people who see these pieces as trophies, not memories. Don't let them win. You're braver than I was just by being willing to read this. Forgive me for passing this burden to you. Captain Raymond Drescher. Marcus read the letter twice, then handed it to Arthur, who read it and wiped his eyes. He was a good man, Arthur said quietly. Haunted, but good. We're giving it all back, Marcus said. Every piece, to the families, to the museums, to whoever it rightfully belongs to. Arthur smiled. Ray would be glad to hear that, and relieved. They talked for another hour, Arthur sharing stories about Drescher, how he'd lived simply, growing his own food, reading voraciously, rarely coming to town, how he'd wake screaming some nights from dreams Arthur could only imagine, how once, drunk on whiskey Arthur had brought, Drescher had wept, and said he'd spent his whole life wondering if saving art was worth the cost of hiding truth. As dawn broke, Arthur stood to leave. The Vosses won't give up. They've got too much invested in this. You watch yourself. I will, Marcus promised. Arthur paused at the edge of the clearing. One more thing. Ray kept a secondary journal. His war journal from 1944 to 46. It's hidden in the desk upstairs. False bottom in the left drawer. He wrote where he found every single item, who it belonged to, what he saw when he recovered it. If you're going to return these things, you'll need that information. Marcus felt hope surge. Thank you for everything. Thank Ray. He's the one who never stopped believing someone would do right by those pieces. As Arthur disappeared into the trees, Tyler emerged from the cabin, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Who was that? A friend, Marcus said, and I think he just gave us the key to everything. They found the war journal exactly where Arthur said it would be. 200 pages, handwritten, detailing every item Drescher had recovered. The dates, the locations, the condition, and in many cases, heartbreaking descriptions of what he'd witnessed. May 12th, 1945. Entered apartment at Prinsengracht 267, Amsterdam. Jewish family, name Levi. Entire apartment ransacked, furniture overturned, drawers emptied. Found painting wrapped in blanket under bed. Village square scene, signed H. Levi, 1936. Also found children's toys, photographs, a wedding ring. Family's fate unknown. took painting and personal items for preservation, catalogued under item 37. Tyler cross-referenced the entry with their inventory. Item 37, the painting they'd chosen for their first return attempt. "We have everything," Tyler said, voice filled with awe. "We have exactly where it came from, when it was taken, who it belonged to. We can do this. We can actually return these things to the right people." Marcus pulled his son into a hug. "We can, and we will." That afternoon, Dr. Rebecca Hirsch-Cohen arrived in a rental car, alone as promised. She was 62, with silver hair pulled back, intelligent eyes behind simple glasses, and the bearing of someone who'd spent a lifetime in libraries and museums. She shook Marcus's hand firmly, then Tyler's. "Show me," she said simply. They took her to the vault. She stood at the entrance for a long moment, just looking, her hand over her mouth. Then she stepped inside, moving slowly from piece to piece, examining, evaluating, occasionally gasping softly. At the Vermeer, she stopped. She pulled a small magnifying glass from her bag and studied the brushwork, the signature, the frame. Tears ran down her face. "This is Girl with a Water Pitcher," she whispered. "Stolen from a private collector in Paris in 1943, listed as destroyed, but here it is." She moved to the Rembrandts, the Raphael, the Picasso, each one a revelation, each one a miracle. Finally, she turned to Marcus and Tyler. "Do you understand what you have here? This isn't just a collection. This is a missing chapter of history. These pieces have been mourned, searched for, given up as lost, and you've kept them safe." "We haven't done anything yet," Marcus said. "Drescher did the hard part." Dr. Hirsch-Cohen shook her head. "Drescher hid them. You're going to return them. That's harder. Much harder." They spent the rest of the day going through the war journal, the main journal, the letters, the documentation. Dr. Hirsch-Cohen photographed everything, took detailed notes, made lists. As the sun set, she sat with them at the kitchen table and laid out the reality. "If we do this right," she said, "it'll take years. Authentication, provenance research, locating families or their descendants, navigating international law, dealing with competing claims. And that's assuming everyone plays fair, which they won't." "What about the Vosses?" Tyler asked. She sighed. "People like Martin Voss are parasites. They thrive on desperation and secrecy. Once we go public, once legitimate institutions are involved, they lose their power. But until then, they're dangerous. They'll pressure you, threaten you, maybe worse." "So we go public now," Marcus said. "Tomorrow, we contact the FBI, the State Department, whoever needs to know." Dr. Hirsch-Cohen hesitated. "If we do that, you lose all control. The government will seize everything as evidence. It could sit in a warehouse for a decade while agencies fight over jurisdiction. I've seen it happen." "Then what do you suggest?" She leaned forward. "We build an airtight case first. I authenticate as many pieces as I can. We match items to families using Drescher's journals. We create a repatriation plan with clear provenance and legal framework. Then we approach the authorities not as people who found stolen property, but as custodians executing a deliberate repatriation project. We control the narrative." Marcus looked at Tyler. His son nodded. "How long?" Marcus asked. "Give me 2 weeks. I'll bring in colleagues I trust. We'll work around the clock, but I need you to keep this quiet and keep this secure." "The Vosses aren't going to wait 2 weeks." "Then you'll need protection. I have contacts, people who specialize in securing high-value assets. Former military, very discreet." Marcus shook his head. "I can't afford private security." Dr. Hirsch-Cohen smiled. "I'm not asking you to pay. There are foundations, organizations dedicated to art repatriation. They'll fund this, gladly. What you have here is their entire mission embodied. They'll protect it." That night, as Dr. Hirsch-Cohen made calls from the cabin's porch, pacing and speaking in rapid, excited tones, Marcus and Tyler sat by the fire. "We're really doing this," Tyler said. "There's no going back now." "You scared?" Marcus asked. "Terrified, but also, I don't know, proud, like we're part of something that actually matters." Marcus put his arm around his son's shoulders. Your mum's gonna kill me when she finds out I put you in danger." Tyler laughed. "Mum's going to kill you when she finds out you had 200 million in art and didn't sell it." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the flames dance. "Dad," Tyler said after a while. "Yeah? Whatever happens, I'm glad it's us doing this, together." Marcus felt his heart swell. "Me too, son, me too." Outside, under a canopy of stars, Rebecca Hirsch-Cohen finished her final call and looked up at the cabin. Inside, through the window, she could see father and son sitting by the fire, holding vigil over treasures that had waited 75 years to go home. She thought of her own father, who'd spent his final years haunted by the pieces that got away, by the families he couldn't help, by the art that vanished into private collections and black markets. Now maybe his work could finally be finished. She walked back inside, determination in every step, ready to fight for what was right, ready to bring light to what had been hidden too long in darkness. The reckoning was coming. For the Vosses, for the institutions that had failed, for everyone who'd profited from others' suffering. But first, they had work to do. 73 items, 73 families, 73 chances to make something right in a world that had gone so terribly wrong. And Marcus Hayes, broken firefighter, struggling father, accidental guardian of history's stolen treasures, was ready to see it through, no matter the cost. The security team arrived 48 hours after Dr. Hirsch-Cohen's first call. 3 men, all former military, all vetted by organizations that had spent decades recovering looted art. They set up a perimeter around the cabin, installed motion sensors, and established watch rotations. Marcus felt safer, but also more aware of just how serious this had become. Dr. Hirsch-Cohen worked with the intensity of someone racing against time. She brought in 2 colleagues, both experts in authentication and provenance research. Dr. James Way, a specialist in Renaissance art from the Getty Museum, and Dr. Sarah Feldman, who'd spent 30 years tracking Nazi-looted Jewish artifacts for the World Jewish Restitution Organization. They transformed the cabin's main room into a research station. Laptops, reference books, magnifying equipment, cameras for documentation. The vault became a controlled environment where each piece was examined, photographed from every angle, tested when possible without causing damage. Tyler became their assistant, learning authentication techniques, taking notes, cross-referencing Drescher's journals with historical records. Marcus watched his son flourish under the mentorship of these scholars, asking questions, making connections, becoming invested in ways that went far beyond the monetary value. On the 5th day, Dr. Way confirmed what they'd all suspected but barely dared believe. The Vermeer was authentic. Radiocarbon dating of the canvas, spectroscopic analysis of the paint, comparison with known works, everything aligned. Girl with a water pitcher, stolen from the Rousseau family in Paris in 1943, presumed destroyed in the war, was real. Dr. Feldman authenticated the religious artifacts one by one, the golden menorah from Prague, crafted in 1796, the Torah scrolls, some over 200 years old, the Shabbat set with the children's names carved inside, belonging to the Goldstein family of Munich. By the end of the 2nd week, they had authenticated 59 of the 73 items as genuine. The total verified value exceeded their initial estimate. $265 million was conservative. With proper auction, with the right buyers, the collection could fetch closer to $350 million. But that was never the plan. Dr. Hirsch-Cohen assembled everyone in the cabin on a cold November evening. The security team, the researchers, Marcus and Tyler. She'd been on video calls all day with various organizations and government agencies, and her face showed the weight of what she was about to say. "We're ready to go public," she announced. "I've coordinated with the FBI's art crime team, the State Department's Cultural Heritage Center, and several international agencies. Tomorrow morning, we hold a press conference in Denver. We announce the discovery, present our authentication findings, and lay out our repatriation framework." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. What happens after that? Chaos, honestly. Media frenzy, claims from multiple parties, legal challenges. but also hopefully reunions, families coming forward with documentation, communities reclaiming their heritage. She paused. There's something else. The organizations I've been working with, they want to offer you a finder's fee. Tyler looked up sharply. How much? Standard practice in cases like this is 10% of authenticated value. Given that we've verified $265 million worth of items, that would be $26.5 million. The room went silent. Marcus felt dizzy. $26 million. More money than he'd ever imagined. Enough to solve every problem, to give Tyler every opportunity to live comfortably for the rest of their lives. But, Dr. Hirsch-Cohen continued, there are conditions. You'd have to agree to certain terms about how the repatriation is handled, cooperate fully with investigations, and accept that some governments may dispute the finder's fee arrangement. Marcus looked at Tyler. His son's face was unreadable, but Marcus could see the wheels turning behind his eyes. Can we have tonight to think about it? Marcus asked. Dr. Hirsch-Cohen nodded. Of course. The press conference is at 10 tomorrow morning. I need your answer by 8. After everyone dispersed to their various stations and sleeping arrangements, Marcus and Tyler sat alone by the fire once more. They'd spent so many nights here now, talking through impossible decisions, that the cabin felt less like a discovery and more like a crucible, a place where they were being forged into something new. $26 million, Tyler said quietly. We could do a lot with that. We could, Marcus agreed. We could pay Mom back every penny you owe her, get you the surgery you need for your knee. I could go to any college I want. We could buy a real house, not rent. We could actually breathe. Marcus nodded. All of that was true. All of that was tempting beyond measure. Tyler continued. But I keep thinking about something Dr. Feldman said. She told me that when her grandmother died, all she wanted was one thing back. A candlestick her great-grandmother had brought from Poland. Just one object to connect her to her family's past, and she never found it. It's probably in some collector's private vault, or it was melted down, or it's just gone. He looked at his father. What if we could give someone their candlestick back? What if we could give 100 people their candlesticks back? Marcus felt something shift in his chest. What are you saying? I'm saying what if we took that money and used it to keep doing this? Not just with Drescher's collection, but with other collections, other hidden treasures. What if we created something that kept searching, kept returning, kept making these connections? Marcus stared at his son. A foundation. Yeah, the Drescher Foundation, or whatever. But something that's dedicated to doing what we're doing here. Finding stolen art and artifacts and giving them back. Not for profit, for purpose. That's a beautiful idea, Ty. But 26 million sounds like a lot until you start talking about running an organization. Staff, researchers, travel, legal fees. It would run out eventually. Tyler smiled. But imagine what we could do before it did, and imagine the people we'd inspire. Other people sitting on family secrets, on hidden collections, on things they didn't know how to return. We'd show them it's possible. Marcus felt tears building. When had his son become so wise? When had this angry, resentful teenager transformed into someone who saw $26 million as seed money for justice? Your mother's going to think we're crazy, Marcus said. Mom's going to understand, eventually. She raised me to care about more than money. She might not admit it, but she'll be proud. They sat in silence for a while. Then Marcus said, There's one more thing we could do with it. What's that? This cabin, this place where it all happened. We could turn it into something. A museum, an educational center. A place where people can learn about the monuments men, about art repatriation, about the families who lost everything. Tyler's eyes lit up. And we could display some of Drescher's research, his journals, show people his struggle, make him not just a man who hid things, but a man who cared so much he couldn't let them go until he knew they'd be safe. Exactly. They shook hands like business partners sealing a deal, then laughed and hugged like father and son who'd just decided to give away a fortune and felt wealthier for it. The next morning, Marcus gave Dr. Hirsch-Cohen their answer. They would accept the finder's fee, but they'd use it to establish a foundation dedicated to art and artifact repatriation. Dr. Hirsch-Cohen smiled like she'd expected nothing less and told them she'd already drafted preliminary paperwork, just in case. The press conference was held in a Denver hotel ballroom packed with reporters, cameras, and curious onlookers. Dr. Hirsch-Cohen stood at the podium with Marcus and Tyler flanking her. The security team watched from the edges of the room, alert for any sign of the Vosses, though none came. Dr. Hirsch-Cohen laid out the discovery: the cabin, the vault, the 73 items. She showed photographs of select pieces, careful not to reveal too much. She explained Captain Raymond Drescher's history, his role in the Monuments Men, his decades-long guardianship of these treasures, and then she introduced Marcus and Tyler, who stood nervously as flashbulbs popped and cameras whirred. A reporter shouted, "Mr. Hayes, you could be one of the richest men in Colorado right now. Why give it back?" Marcus leaned toward the microphone, his voice steady despite his nerves. "Because it was never mine to keep. These items belong to families who had everything stolen from them. Selling them would be stealing them again. My son and I, we're just the guys who had the privilege of finding them and the responsibility of doing right by them." Another reporter, "What about the finder's fee? Rumor is you're receiving millions." Tyler stepped forward this time. "We're using that money to create a foundation, the Drescher Foundation for Art and Cultural Repatriation. We're going to keep doing this work, keep finding things, keep giving them back." The room erupted with questions, but Dr. Hirsch-Cohen called for order and explained the next steps. Families could come forward with claims, documentation would be reviewed, items would be returned through proper legal channels. The process would be transparent and thorough. In the back of the room, unnoticed by most, Arthur Brennan stood with tears in his eyes, watching his old friend's legacy finally receiving the honor it deserved. The media coverage was immediate and overwhelming. The story of the broke carpenter and his teenage son choosing to return a fortune rather than keep it went viral. News outlets around the world picked it up. The cabin on Black Pine Road became the subject of documentaries, articles, and countless social media posts. But more importantly, families started coming forward. The first was a woman named Rebecca Levy, 78 years old, living in Tel Aviv. She'd seen the news coverage showing the painting from Amsterdam, the village square signed H. Levi. She contacted Dr. Hirsch-Cohen with trembling hands and a breaking voice. That was her great-uncle's painting. Henrik Levy, who'd been an amateur artist, a baker by trade, who'd painted the square where his bakery stood. Henrik and his wife Miriam and their 3 children had been deported in 1943. None survived. Rebecca was the daughter of Henrik's brother, who'd escaped to Palestine before the war. 2 months later, on a cold January morning, Rebecca Levy stood in the cabin on Black Pine Road, looking at her great-uncle's painting for the first time. She traced the outline of the bakery with her finger, tears streaming down her weathered face. "My father talked about this painting," she whispered. "He said Henrik was so proud of it. He'd hung it in the bakery where everyone could see it. Papa said Henrik believed that if you could capture a moment of beauty, you could hold on to it forever, even when everything else was taken away." Marcus and Tyler stood with her, silent witnesses to a reunion 76 years in the making. "Thank you," Rebecca said, turning to them. "Thank you for caring enough to give this back, for seeing it as more than just paint and canvas." She took the painting home to Israel, where it now hangs in a Holocaust museum in Jerusalem, with a plaque telling Henrik Levy's story and the story of how his final work of art found its way back to his family. The Goldstein family items were reunited with a granddaughter in New York, a woman named Sarah Klein who'd spent years researching her family tree. When Dr. Feldman presented her with the wooden box containing the Shabbat set, Sarah opened it and saw the names carved inside, names of the aunt and uncles she'd never met, and collapsed into sobs so deep they seemed to come from generations past. The Vermeer was returned to the Rousseau family descendants in France, who immediately donated it to the Louvre with the condition that it be displayed with full attribution to their family's loss and the story of its recovery. One by one, over the course of 18 months, 53 of the 73 items found their way home. Some went to families, some to museums, some to synagogues and community centers. Each return was documented, celebrated, mourned, and honored. The items that couldn't be matched to specific families were donated to institutions dedicated to Holocaust education and remembrance, with plaques explaining Captain Drescher's role in their preservation. The gold bars presented a unique challenge. With no clear provenance, they couldn't be returned to specific victims. After extensive legal consultation, Marcus and Tyler decided to liquidate them and use the proceeds, approximately $7 million, to fund Holocaust education programs and support survivors. Through it all, the Drescher Foundation grew. Dr. Hirsch Cohen became its first director. Tyler, despite being just 16, became deeply involved, working summers and weekends, learning the intricacies of provenance research and repatriation law. He'd decided he wanted to study art history and international law in college to make this his life's work. Marcus threw himself into transforming the cabin. With foundation funds and some of the finder's fee, he renovated the structure while maintaining its historical integrity. The vault remained intact, now a centerpiece of the museum experience. Visitors could descend the same stairs Marcus had walked that first night, see the same steel door, understand the weight of what had been hidden there. The main floor became an exhibition space telling Captain Drescher's story. His journals were displayed behind protective glass. Photographs from his war service lined the walls. A video presentation explained the Monuments Men program and the ongoing effort to recover stolen art. The upper floor became an education center where school groups could learn about World War II, the Holocaust, and the importance of cultural preservation. Tyler helped design the curriculum, making sure it honored the victims while inspiring the next generation to care about history and justice. Jennifer, Marcus's ex-wife, visited the museum 6 months after it opened. She walked through in silence, reading every placard, watching every video, examining every photograph. When she finished, she found Marcus in his small office, a converted bedroom where he now worked as the foundation's operations manager. "I thought you were crazy," she said, sitting across from him. "When Tyler told me you'd found millions in art and were giving it away, I thought you'd lost your mind. I almost called a lawyer to get full custody." Marcus nodded. "I wouldn't have blamed you." "But this," she gestured around, "this is incredible. What you and Tyler built, the families you've helped, the education you're providing." She paused, her eyes glistening. "This is the man I married, the one who ran into burning forests to save strangers. I'm proud of you, Marcus, and I'm sorry I doubted you." They talked for hours, really talked, for the first time since the divorce. She told him about her struggles, her fears, her own journey. He shared his transformation, how finding the vault had given him something more valuable than gold or paintings. It had given him purpose again. They didn't get back together. Too much had changed. Too much distance had grown. But they found friendship again, partnership in raising Tyler, and mutual respect for the paths they'd each chosen. The town of Ridgeline transformed along with the cabin. What had been a dying mountain community with little economy beyond hunting season became a destination. The Drescher Heritage Museum, as it was officially named, drew visitors from around the world. Tourists meant business. The old diner expanded, a hotel opened, art galleries and bookshops appeared on Main Street. Deputy Frank Morales, who'd warned Marcus about the Vosses, became the museum's head of security. Arthur Brennan gave weekly talks about his friendship with Captain Drescher, sharing stories that brought the reclusive soldier to life for audiences who hung on every word. Even the locals who'd initially been suspicious of Marcus embraced the change. They'd seen what caring about something bigger than yourself could create. They'd seen broken things, a cabin, a relationship, a community, made whole through commitment to doing what was right. The Vosses never directly threatened Marcus again after the press conference. Martin Voss's gallery in Denver was raided by the FBI 6 months later as part of a larger investigation into stolen art trafficking. He was indicted on multiple counts of dealing in stolen property. Garrett Voss disappeared, rumored to be in South America, still brokering deals for collectors who didn't ask questions. 2 years after that first night in the cabin, Marcus stood on the newly rebuilt porch as the sun set over the Colorado mountains. The museum had just closed for the day. 347 visitors had walked through, a record for a Tuesday in November. Tyler pulled up in his car, home from his first semester at Columbia University, where he was studying art history under Dr. Hirsch Cohen's mentorship. He'd grown into a young man Marcus barely recognized, confident, purposeful, kind. They sat together on the porch steps, just as they had that first weekend, but everything was different now. "I met someone at school," Tyler said. "Her grandmother survived Auschwitz. She told me about your museum, about what we're doing. This girl, she just started crying. She said her grandmother had been looking for a necklace her mother had given her before they were separated. Just this simple silver necklace with a star. They never found it." Marcus listened. "And I thought, what if it's out there somewhere? What if it's in someone's drawer or a pawn shop or another hidden vault? What if we could find it?" Tyler looked at his father. "That's what we do now, right? We find the things people thought were lost forever." Marcus smiled. "That's exactly what we do." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the mountains turn purple in the fading light. Marcus thought about the journey that had brought them here, the $850 cabin that had seemed like a desperate gamble, the vault that had seemed like a curse and a blessing wrapped in steel, the choice that had seemed impossible but turned out to be the only one they could live with. He thought about Captain Raymond Drescher, who'd carried his burden alone for 71 years, who'd died thinking he'd failed, not knowing that his final act, hiding that letter for Arthur to find, had set everything in motion. Drescher hadn't failed. He'd just needed time, needed the right people, needed a broke carpenter with a bad knee and a teenage son with an old soul and the courage to do what generations before them couldn't or wouldn't. "Dad?" Tyler said, breaking the silence. "Yeah?" "Do you ever regret it? Not keeping the money? Not selling even one piece?" Marcus thought about his knee, which still ached on cold mornings, about the modest salary he drew from the foundation, about the simple life he lived now, comfortable but far from wealthy. Then he thought about Rebecca Levy crying over her great-uncle's painting, about Sarah Klein holding the box with her family's names carved inside, about the museum full of students learning that history matters, that justice matters, that doing the right thing matters even when it costs you everything. "Not once," Marcus said. "Not for a single second." Tyler leaned against his father's shoulder. "Me neither." As darkness settled over the mountain, lights began to glow inside the museum. The security system activated. The precious few items temporarily on display, pieces awaiting authentication or in transition to their final homes, were secured for the night. But the legacy wasn't in those items. It was in the work that continued, in the families still searching, in the students still learning, in the foundation that now employed 12 people dedicated to the mission of bringing stolen beauty back to light. It was in a father and son who'd found each other again through shared purpose. It was in a community that had discovered prosperity came not from exploitation, but from service. It was in every person who'd visit this remote mountain cabin and leave understanding that some things are worth more than their price tag, that some choices define who we are, and that courage isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's saying no to a fortune because yes would cost you your soul. Marcus Hayes had bought a worthless cabin for $850 and found $265 million in treasure. But the real wealth wasn't in the vault. It was in the realization that he could still be the man he'd once been, the one who ran toward danger to help others, who sacrificed comfort for principle, who taught his son that character is measured not by what you take, but by what you're willing to give back. Captain Raymond Drescher had written in his final journal entry that he'd failed everyone. But standing on this porch, watching his museum glow against the darkening sky, Marcus knew different. Drescher had succeeded, not in returning the art himself, but in protecting it long enough for the right people to find it, in leaving enough clues, enough truth, enough hope that someone would care. And they had. God, they had. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of pine and snow. Winter was coming, but inside the Drescher Heritage Museum, families were planning visits. Researchers were tracking leads, students were discovering passion. And somewhere, a woman was telling her granddaughter about a necklace with a star, still believing, still hoping, still searching. Because now she knew, now everyone knew. Some things aren't lost forever. Some stories don't end in darkness. Some people still choose light, even when it costs them a fortune, even when the easier path is right there waiting. Marcus stood, offered his hand to Tyler, and pulled his son to his feet. "Come on," he said. "Let's go look at tomorrow's tour schedule. I heard we have a group coming from Germany, Holocaust survivors and their families." "Yeah," Tyler said. 3 of them are bringing items they've held on to. They want to know if we can help find where they came from." Marcus smiled. "Then we better get to work." They walked inside together, father and son, guardians of memory, champions of the lost, proof that the measure of a person isn't in what they find but in what they do with it once it's in their hands. Anyone can stumble onto treasure if they're willing to look beneath the surface of worthless things. But it takes something deeper than luck, something rarer than gold, to recognize that the greatest fortune isn't in what you keep, but in what you set free. As the door closed behind them and the mountain settled into night, the cabin stood as it had for 56 years. But now it wasn't hiding secrets. It was telling truths. And every truth told was a theft undone, a family healed, a piece of darkness transformed into light. Because Marcus Hayes and Tyler Hayes had learned what Captain Raymond Drescher always knew but couldn't quite believe, that doing the right thing is never worthless, that stolen beauty belongs to the world, and that sometimes the bravest act is simply refusing to let greed win. The end. Up next, 2 more powerful stories are waiting for you. Click to keep discovering with us. And don't forget to hit subscribe if you believe some things are worth more than money and the greatest treasures are the ones we give away.